الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وجعل الظلمات والنور ثم الذين كفروا بربهم يعدلون ونشكره ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فهو مهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ولي الصالحين وأشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا وأسواتنا محمدا صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم عبد الله ورسوله صادق الوعد الأمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وأصحاب سيدنا محمد اللهم ارزقنا شفاعة سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم ولا تحرمنا صحبته إنك أنت أرحم الراحمين وأما بعد عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي أولا بتقوى الله يقول الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه المبين يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين ويقول الله تبارك وتعالى إنما المؤمنون إخوة وأصلحوا بين أخويكم واتقوا الله لعلكم ترحمون. Beloved brothers and sisters in faith, I first begin recommending for you as well as myself to have taqwa for Allah. And He subhanahu wa ta'ala commands in the Quran, O you who believe, have taqwa for Allah and be with the truthful people. And He Azza wa Jal said in His clear book, the believers are but one brotherhood, so reconcile matters and make peace between your brothers. and have taqwa for Allah in order that you may receive divine mercy. With this going on in the United States of America right now, mass protests, encampments on college campuses, some of those being broken up, we would like to remind you all, as well as myself, in this very brief moment, about the obligation and the conditions for us in regards to enjoining good and forbidding evil in any society that we live in. And enjoining good and forbidding evil is of the foundational principles of al-Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this a communal obligation in the Quran when he said, وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Let there be amongst you a group that calls towards khair, excellence. Meaning, number one, we have to always be a people who are about da'wah, to inviting people to Islam in an organized fashion. And then of the command, and those who enjoin good, and those who prohibit evil, and these will be the successful people. Allahumma ij'alna min al-muflihin. And he subhanahu wa ta'ala praises this ummah in the Quran with 3 descriptions though, not just Muslim by name. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. You're the best nation brought up for humankind. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar wa tu'minuna billah. Why? If you enjoin good, you forbid evil, and you believe in the oneness of God, in which in the tartib, Tawheed is actually mentioned third in the 3 of the sequence, in which enjoining good and forbidding evil is mentioned before belief in God's oneness. And he subhanahu wa ta'ala told us of our obligations as believers in the description of how believers in particular are supposed to be allied with one another to protect each other's sacred interests. الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الْمُؤْمِنَاتُ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَيُطِيعُونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ أُولَٰئِكَ سَيَرْحَمُهُمُ اللَّهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. Believing men and believing women have each other's backs. They're allies of one another, to the exclusion of other people. They enjoin what is good. They forbid what is evil. They establish the prayer. They institute zakah, and they strive to obey Allah and His Messenger, alayhi afdalus salam, in all other matters. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. As descriptions of true believers, those who are seeking to complete their iman. El-iman qawlun wa amal is a statement of Imam Malik, rahmatullah alayh. Because true faith is in speech as well as in deed. It's in speech, it's the declaration of faith, but iman is not just lip service. Iman is supposed to be put into action, not just lip service. In this regard, like any other matter, in our activism falls under the realm of al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. As Imam Malik, Imam Darul Hijra, rahimahullah ta'ala said, Jihad al-lisan, al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. The jihad, the struggle of the tongue, is what? Enjoining good and forbidding evil. The jihad of the tongue. Of course, it's the jihad of the heart. Jihad of the tongue. The struggle of the tongue. The exertion of the tongue. In the standing for justice, our scholars say that al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar has shurut. It has conditions. Just like as-salah has shurut. Right? Salah has conditions for valid salah. Being in a state of tahara. right? Facing towards Qibla, having al-libas, clothing that covers the aura, and the aura is different for the female than for the male. وَلَيْسَ ذَكَرَ كَالْأُنْثَى, because the male is not like the female. And other conditions in regards of things that must be said for salah to be valid. Likewise, enjoining good and forbidding evil also has conditions. The first is knowing what is good and what is evil. How can one enjoin something without knowing the definition of good and evil? Al-Raghib Asfahani, Ash-Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, lughawi, linguistically, al-mahruf, it means al-adl wa tayyib. That which is just and that which is wholesome, what is good. Al-adl, justice, is when things are in their proper places as Allah intended them to be in. This is justice. The opposite of al-mahruf is al-munkar, al-zulm wal-khubth. It is injustice or wrongdoing, taking things outside of their proper places that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended them to be in. This is how we understand injustice. Not just because what is most popular or public opinion polls. Because now we live in the times of some people where, because of feelings or hawa, they make the mahruf into munkar and the munkar into mahruf. The Quran is our first litmus test of objective truth. Anything that is prohibited in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says don't go near, don't do, that He sent la'na upon, ghadab upon, or anything that He mentions in the Quran where there is al-wa'id, threat of divine punishment, we can never say that is mahruf. That's never good. Never just. Never. And then, of course, the authentic sunnah in speech and in action of al-Habib al-Mustafa sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. As it relates to our first definitions of how we define al-Mahruf. Then also in al-Mahruf, in knowing al-Mahruf has a relationship not just to the text or a nusus, but also context. The context of the society that we live in, because all societies have their urf. Urf is related to mahruf. There are those things that are customary and those things that are known in society. Custom of society cannot override the Quran and Sunnah, yet at the same time, those things need to be factored in, because sometimes advancing something in one society, in one context, may be good, and in another context, it could be harmful. And the people of wisdom, of hikmah, understand this difference. For instance, your needy brother, here, give an example about understanding context. As an African American, it was no surprise to me at UCLA how those radical Zionists came and attacked the people in the encampment, and none of them got arrested. And then the next day, the police came and used force to remove peaceful protesters in the encampment. You know why? Because of the context of America, of how law enforcement was started to begin with, starting with overseers on plantations to capture African people, and the whole context of how the police and their priorities favor the status quo almost every time when there is some sort of mass mobilization in the history of America. This is history. So if you understand context, then you know how to strategize about Ma'ruf and Nahi al-Munkar to understand what you are facing. Those who are naive and don't understand the context, but only text, may cause themselves some harm or some difficulty. So we have to understand text and context. of living in the American society. And the true scholars of this deen recognize this. Imam Malik, we mentioned Imam Malik quite a bit because he is the Imam of the madhab in which adat and urf are central to the madhab. In his school, traditionally speaking, fuqaha would not give a ruling outside of their locality or location. Why? Because they don't understand the fiqh al-waqi, the facts on the ground. So a scholar in Al-Andalus and a scholar in the Maghrib, someone in the Maghrib maybe would not give a fatwa about what's going on across the Strait of Gibraltar in Al-Andalus. Why? Because at that time, for instance, Al-Maghrib was majority Muslim. In Al-Andalus, or Muslim Spain, Ahlul Kitab was always the majority of the population, though the Muslims ruled it. So there's a different custom of the land. So in order to be intelligent, anyone who's involved in activism should be seeking advice from the people of this land and understand the history of this land. Otherwise, you make a major mistake. You miscalculate and then say, oh, the system is broken. The system's not broken. The system is operating exactly how it was designed to operate. What happened at UCLA instance? That happened exactly the way the system was designed, if you understand the system. Those who are ignorant of the system, oh, I'm so surprised. Then others are surprised why you're surprised. The next point is adab. Everything in this deen has adab. And there's an adab to enjoining good and forbidding evil. All the scholars across the madhab, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi al-Hanbali, rahimahullah ta'ala, all of these great scholars across the madhab say that first, in enjoining good and forbidding evil with one's adversaries even, it should be done bil-lin wa rifq. Tone matters. The way we talk to people matters. The worst human being mentioned in the Quran regarding tyranny, government tyranny, is Fir'aun. He's the worst. Yet, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded his two prophets to speak to him, Musa alayhi salam wa Harun alayhi salam, what was the command? فَقُولَ لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا لَعَلَّهُ يَتَذَكَّرُ أَوْ يَخْشَى. Fir'aun's the worst in the world. He's an archetype of tyranny. But what did Allah say? Go to speak to him in a mild tone. Don't yell at him. Don't cuss him out. Don't pray against him. Least what? He remembers or he fears. Shawwal is the month of Ghazwa Uhud. This was a setback for Muslims. They start off with 1,000 troops. Then they end up at the place of Uhud only being 700. Abdullah ibn Ubay convinced 300 people of Medina. He was the chief hypocrite of Medina. He's from Bani Khazraj. Influenced them to leave after they agreed to go to battle. Then there were 50 archers who were told, stand your post. Be disciplined and stand your post. And when they saw the Muslims getting victory, 700 Muslims against 3,000 mushrikeen. They saw the anfal, the spoils of war, and the majority of those archers, Sahaba, may Allah be pleased with them. They're human beings, they made mistakes. They came with one intention, but they got allured by the material entrapments of running after the spoils of war. Khalid ibn al-Walid, before he became Muslim, came from behind and it caused many casualties against the Muslims, including Hamza radiallahu anh being martyred. They came from behind. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was injured. Actually was saved by a woman, Nusayba, who threw herself in front of him. It said that she took 13 wounds. The men abandoned their posts. So the sister had to step in. That's another lesson we'll talk about tomorrow. Brothers, you have to be on post. You have to be on post and keep your commitments. What is the lesson that we can take from this? When the Sahaba saw what happened to Hamza, they asked the Prophet ﷺ, was he going to pray against these people? What was his response? Allahumma hdi qawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun. Oh Allah, guide my people, for surely they don't know. This is also part of our program. We should be praying for hidayah for the people, including those so-called counter-protesters, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides them. Hind, the one that commissioned Hamza being killed, she died on Islam. Washi, the one who killed Hamza, Hind, who commissioned Washi to kill Hamza, she died upon Islam. Abu Sufyan, who led that army, died upon Islam. Washi, the one who assassinated Hamza, died upon Islam. Much of our enjoying and good and forbidding, even da'wah, starts with making dua for people at the last third of the night. That is where the da'wah starts and the real activism starts. Waking up out of our sleeps at the time of tahajjud and praying for ourselves and praying for the people. Number one. That's where it starts. And then calling the people, bil hikmah wa ma'ilatul hasana, and calling the people with wisdom and beautiful preaching. Perhaps some of these liberal Jewish people, and even some of these people who are Zionists, one day may be in here praying with you. Maybe one of those people may go study and become a scholar and be our leader one day. Wallahu a'lam. So we have to put things in context. Islam is a love movement. We love what was pleasurable to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his minhaj, his methodology. Not neo-Marxism, not acting off of anger or rage, none of that. That's not our methodology. Our methodology is what was the actions and the inward disposition of al-Habib al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لكم استغفروه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين وصحبه الطيبين والتابعين لهم بخير وإحسان إلى يوم الدين وعلينا معهم وفيهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين. وأما بعد يقول الله تبارك وتعالى إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وصل على المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم وأموات. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم أصلح أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم فرج عن أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم ارحم أمة محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا دائما أبدا. اللهم انصر إخوانا في غزة وفلسطين. اللهم انصر إخوانا في غزة وفلسطين. اللهم انصر إخوانا في غزة وفلسطين والسودان وفي كل مكان برحمتك يا أكرم الأكرمين. سبحان ربك بالعزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. أقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله.
استووا. الله أكبر.